Shalom and grace to you. We're Tushia Life Ministries, sound wisdom for a successful walk. We proclaim the gospel of the kingdom of God as we take the light of the word to the world to edify, equip, and empower disciples of Yeshua in the nations. Welcome, and thank you for joining our 50-day spiritual journey through the book of Revelation, one bite at a time. Let's pause and pray. Heavenly Father, we're truly thankful for your presence in our lives today and bringing us to this point in the day. We thank you for giving us clarity, accuracy, relevance, and edifying understanding of some background information that will be required for us to understand the revelation, the unveiling of your Son Yeshua in the book that John was ordained to write. So we thank you. Thank you for those who are currently online and those who will be seeing this later. And we ask that you would just show us the things we need to see, that we might know the things we need to know, so we're able to do the things you need us to do. We give thanks in Yeshua's name. Amen. We started in Daniel chapter 2 in our last session. So some years after Nebuchadnezzar's dream, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions in his head, which he wrote down. He saw some creatures coming out of the sea. Now I want to just ask you to make a note. Revelation chapter 7 verse 15 helps us to understand what the sea can represent in cases like this. Revelation 17:15. And he said to me, the waters or sea which you saw are peoples and crowds and nations and tongues. Peoples and nations are what are most often intended when they talk about coming out of the sea in this context. The dream and the vision that Daniel had has to do with 4 kings. We're going to know this because Daniel chapter 7 verse 17 tells us these great beasts, which are 4 in number, are 4 kings who will arise from the earth or from among the people. Here's what he saw in his dream. Daniel chapter 7 verses 3 through 8. Daniel 7 verses 3 through 8. And it reads, and 4 great beasts were coming up from the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had wings of an eagle. I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a heart of a man was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second one in the likeness of a bear, and it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. And thus they said to it, arise, devour much meat. After this I kept looking, and behold, another one, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, fearsome, terrifying, and extraordinarily strong, and it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. While I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great boasts. So Daniel saw a creature that looked like a lion with eagle's wings. I want you to note something. It didn't say it was a lion. It says it looked like a lion. A lion represents authority and power. An eagle represents strength and power. And there's this combination in this first beast. He saw another creature like a bear with 3 ribs in its mouth. A bear represents veracity and power. And three ribs, excuse me, three ribs in its mouth means it has devoured something, three somethings. Then there was a creature like a leopard. Again, the word like is important. It's not saying it was this thing, but that's what it most likely, what it closely resembled. It was a leopard with 4 wings of a bird and also had 4 heads. A leopard represents speed and astuteness. Astuteness, which is quick to understand a situation and then adapt to it. And the last beast is unlike any creature he's ever seen before. His best description is that it's fearsome, terrifying, and extraordinarily strong, with large iron teeth. It also had 10 horns. An 11th horn came up, and that little horn removed 3 of the existing horns. I want you to know one thing about horns in the Bible. A horn represents something that is victorious, or there is victory, there is strength and power, or authority. After the first earthly kingdom, each succeeding kingdom rises and then falls to its successor. Daniel's focus on the 4th beast picks up in verse 23 and 24. He tells us the 4th beast will be a 4th kingdom on the earth, different from all the other kingdoms. And as for the 10 horns, 10 kings will rise, and another will arise after them, an 11th one, and he'll be different from the previous ones. And he'll make low, that is, he'll do away with 3 of those kings. Remember what he said earlier. There are 10 kings, the 11th king will rise and bring down 3 of that original 10. We move on now to Daniel chapter 8, which is about 2 years later. Daniel 8, verses 3 through 9. This time Daniel has a vision, and he says, "Then I lifted my eyes and looked, and behold, a ram which had 2 horns was standing in front of the canal. Now the 2 horns were long, but one was longer than the other, with the longer one coming up last. I saw the ram butting westward, northward, and southward, and no other beast could stand before it, nor was there anyone to deliver from its power. But it did as it pleased, and it magnified itself. And while I was considering, behold, a male goat was coming from the west over the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a conspicuous horn in its eyes. Then it came up to the ram that had the 2 horns, which I had seen standing in front of the canal, and ran at it in its strong wrath." Verse 7, "I saw it reach the side of the ram, and it was enraged at it, and it struck the ram and broke its 2 horns in pieces. And the ram had no strength to stand in opposition to it. So it was thrown down to the ground and trampled on it, and there was none to deliver the ram from its power," the power of that goat. "Then the male goat magnified itself exceedingly, but as soon as it was mighty, the large horn it had was broken, and in its place there came up 4 conspicuous horns toward the 4 winds of heaven." Whenever you hear about the 4 winds of heaven, it's referring to winds from the east, the west, the north, and the south. We have a ram with 1 horn longer than the other. And then we have a male goat coming from the west that strikes the ram and breaks both horns. The male goat magnifies itself, but its large horn is broken, and in its place are 4 horns. Let me just share with you briefly what this is referring to. The ram with the 2 horns are the Medes and the Persians, 2 different groups that were together, on one head if you were. From the west comes this male goat, speaking of Alexander the Great from Greece. He destroyed the Medes and the Persians He conquered them. But he was only about 32 years old. At the height of his career getting into Persia, he dies. And after he dies, his 4 main generals then rule his empire. It's broken up into 4 different pieces. That's why the leopard has 4 heads. That's why you see the one horn of the goat becomes 4. When we understand the pictures that the Bible is trying to show us, it's easier to understand. But sometimes it's not always as straightforward as you might think. But this one, that's what it's talking about. Verses 15 through 17, Daniel continues. He says, "Now it happened, when I, Daniel, had seen the vision, I sought to understand it." Isn't that what we're trying to do? We want to understand the book of the Revelation, and we want to understand how Daniel will help us understand that. So he says, "And standing before me was one who looked like a man. And I heard the voice of a man saying, 'Gabriel, give this man, give Daniel, an understanding of what has appeared. Explain to him what's going on.'" Verse 17, "So he, Gabriel, came to where I was standing, and when he came, I was terrified and fell on my face. But he said to me, 'Son of man,'" he calls Daniel son of man, "understand that the vision pertains to the time of the end." And he explains to him, verse 19, "Behold, I'm going to let you know what will happen at the final period of the indignation, for it pertains to the appointed time of the end." Verse 20, "The 2-horned ram which you saw is the kings of Media and Persia. The shaggy goat is the king of Greece, and the large horn that's between his eyes is the first king, or Alexander himself. And the broken horn and the 4 horns that stood in its place are 4 kingdoms which will take their stand from his nation, although not with his power." Basically, Alexander's 4 generals, while they divided up all of Alexander's land and territory that he had conquered, did not have the same power that he did over all of them. Now Gabriel shares some more things with Daniel, and in verse 27, Daniel says, "Then I, Daniel, I was exhausted. I was sick for days. Then I rose up again and did the king's work," because he was still working under the king in Babylon or in Persia at this time. He says, "But I was appalled at what had appeared, and there was none to make me understand." I'm emphasizing this because as we're seeking to understand what the word is telling us in Revelation and even here in Daniel, if you don't just get it, that's not a bad thing, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with your thinking. Daniel had Gabriel tell him what was going on, and he still didn't catch it all. So the idea is that we pursue the truth and trust the Spirit of God to give us an understanding of what we need to know when we need to know it, so we can do the thing he needs to do. Remember, the blessing for reading the book of the Revelation is the blessing is to the person who reads it, to the person who hears it, and to the person who keeps, which is to protect, preserve, and practice what they hear. You don't have to do 100% of it. The Father may only want you doing 18%, someone else 50%, someone else 4%. It's not about everyone doing all the same, but just doing fully what we're all called to do. When we read something in the Word, and it may not be clear to us, but we know it is the Father speaking, trust the Word will fulfill its assignment. Because in Isaiah 55, he says, "My word will accomplish what I send it to do." So we might not always understand all the details and all the specific points along the way, but we can trust his word will come to pass, and we want to be busy doing the thing he's called us to do to the best of our ability by the power his Spirit gives us, so when that word comes to pass, we're positioned in the right place at the right time for the right thing to happen. And now we ease into Daniel chapter 9. I need to tell you, back in Ezra chapter 7, a guy by the name of King Artaxerxes I authorizes Ezra to return to Jerusalem with a group of exiles, and he funds the project to rebuild and restore the city. This decree was given in 457 BC, 457 BC. If you're watching this, just jot down 457 into the chat. You're going to want to remember that number because it's going to mean something really key in just a few minutes. Daniel 9 opens with Daniel himself praying and confessing his sins and those of his people Israel. But while he's praying, Gabriel says in verse 22, "O Daniel, I have now come forth to give you insight with understanding. At the beginning of your supplications, the word was issued, so I've come to tell you, for you are highly esteemed, so understand the message and gain understanding in what has appeared." Gabriel is about to reveal to Daniel the exact time when Yahweh's Messiah is going to arrive. Yes, Daniel was told when Yeshua was going to come, and track with me, just stay with me. I'm getting really excited at this point because when I learned this, I couldn't believe it the first time I heard it, but it's true. Daniel 9:24 through 27 is where we're going to begin to bring our lesson today for a landing. But 9:24, Daniel, 70 weeks have been determined for your people and for your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the Holy of Holies. Verse 25, so you are to know and have insight that from the going out of a word to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. It will be restored and rebuilt with a plaza and a moat even in times of distress. Let me repeat. In verse 25, from the going out of a word to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, or 69 weeks. Then, after the 62 weeks, the Messiah will be cut off and have nothing, and the people of the Prince who is to come will destroy the city and the sanctuary, and its end will come with a flood. Even to the end there will be war. Desolations are decreed. Verse 27, and he will make a firm covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he will make sacrifice and grain offerings cease. And on the wing of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction. One that is decreed is poured out on the one who makes desolate. I want you to realize in verse 27, and catch this, it says, and he will make a firm covenant with many for 1 week. We just read in an earlier verse, there's 7 weeks and 62 weeks, and this is and 1 week. 7, 62, and 1 equals 70. Hold on now. The chart that I'm showing up on the left-hand side where it has 70 weeks, I want to share with you that the Bible often, not often, but sometimes uses something called the day-year principle. And that's where 1 day will equal a year. For example, in Numbers 14:34, when 10 of the spies who went in to spy out the land of Canaan came back with an evil report saying, we're not going in there. They're giants. They see we're grasshoppers. Yahweh said, you spied out the land for 40 days. So 1 day, 1 year for each day you will spend in the wilderness. And that's what happened. So 1 day equals a year. And that's actually applied in this context of Daniel. So 1 week, which will be 7 days, if a day is a year, is 7 years. 70 weeks is 390 years. In what Daniel had said, he said there'll be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. 7 weeks would be 49 years. 62 weeks would be 434 years. Remember, it was stated from the time the decree is given, which was 457 BC, to rebuild Jerusalem until the coming of Messiah. That is, until he will be, how would I put it? Not born, but when he begins to display and present himself, that is, as an adult, would be AD 27. Yep. 483 years, and then he would be seen. Now, you might say, sure, that sounds real good. That's really convoluted. Help me understand this a little bit better. Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. And we're getting ready to come down on the landing zone for the plane. Do you remember? Matthew 2 tells us that after Yeshua was born in Bethlehem during Herod's time, Magi from the east, and Magi are men known for astrology, astronomy, and natural sciences, they arrived in Jerusalem asking, where is the one born to be king of the Jews? They were looking for the Messiah. We saw his star in the east and came to worship him. Herod heard this and was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Not really all Jerusalem. The chief priests and the scribes were. So he called the chief priests and the scribes of the people and asked, where is the Messiah to be born? And they said, in Bethlehem of Judea, say the prophets. Then Herod secretly called the Magi and asked them when the star appeared. The point here is that the Magi, who were most likely trained by those who have been trained by Daniel, who was told when the Messiah is going to come, and that was continually taught over there in Persia over time, they knew when the Messiah was supposed to come. And the chief priests and the scribes knew he was coming. Now, you heard they knew where he was going to be, but note, the Magi showed up because they said, and he's supposed to be here now. And the chief priests and scribes did not have any argument with that. They knew when he was going to come. Whew! They knew where, and more significantly, they knew when. When Yahweh tells us something in his word, if it's not for now, then wait for it. It may be in your lifetime, it may be beyond. But when he sends his word to do something, it's going to accomplish what he sent it for. We're going to pause here. And to prepare for our next time together, please read Revelation, oh, I said with an S. I'm so sorry. It's only one Revelation. Revelation chapters 4 and 5. Our next time together is Thursday, May 15th, 2025 at 7 p.m. So until we meet again, shalom.